After using the M4 MacBook Air for nearly 6 months, it impressed me in so many ways while working on coding projects. But a few things still surprise me. Here's my honest review where I share my experience and what I'd do differently if I had the chance to pick it up again. Let's start with first impressions. Unboxing the M4 MacBook Air is as sleek and satisfying as ever. It's super thin, extremely light, and the build quality feels premium. I personally chose the midnight color, which looks really refined and sophisticated. Most of my tech gadgets are matte black or dark, so the M4 MacBook Air fits perfectly into my setup. Compared to the M2 and M3, the design hasn't changed drastically, but there is a small refinement in materials and finish. Apple improved the coating compared to the M2, so fingerprints are less noticeable, though they are still visible. You'll want to wipe it down once a day with a microfiber cloth to keep it looking clean. Moving on to specifications, the MacBook Air with the M4 chip is impressive under the hood. I went with the base configuration, 16GB of RAM and 256GB of SSD. The RAM is enough for most daily development tasks, though heavy multitasking or large projects can push it a bit, and the 256GB SSD fills up quickly once you start installing big programs like Xcode, Docker images or Node modules. The M4 chip has a 10-core CPU and an 8-core GPU in the base configuration, delivering snappy single-core performance and noticeably fast multi-core performance compared to the M3. Another big improvement is support for 2 external 4K displays in addition to the built-in screen. Now let's talk about battery life. The MacBook comes with a slightly bigger battery than last year. 53.8 watt-hours compared to 52.6 watt-hours on the M3. In my daily workflow as a computer science teacher, I run Visual Studio Code for Next.js projects, Python scripts, HTML, CSS and JavaScript. I also use small local databases for exercises, plus a few browser tabs for research or teaching resources. Even with this mix of development tasks, the M4 easily lasts a full working day on a single charge. It stays responsive throughout the day, and Apple Silicon's efficiency means I don't have to worry about constantly hunting for a charger during lessons or coding sessions. I've been using this MacBook daily since April, and over that period I monitored the battery health with CoconutBattery. At the time of testing, the battery charge was 4,579 mAh. With a health of 98.9% relative to its design capacity of 4,629, and the MacBook had gone through 37 charge cycles. These numbers confirm that the battery maintains excellent health even after consistent daily use. Of course, battery life can dip slightly if you're watching 4K footage, running heavier workloads, rendering large Final Cut profiles, compiling large projects, and starting Docker containers or testing local LLMs. But for most daily teaching and coding tasks, the MacBook Air is more than sufficient. Speaking of daily use, storage quickly becomes an important consideration. The MacBook I'm using comes with a base configuration of 256GB. Many viewers have asked in the comments down below whether that's enough for a developer workflow. For my daily use, it generally is. Essential applications, Python scripts, Next.js projects and local databases all fit comfortably on the internal drive. However, things get more demanding when you start working with larger files. I produce videos, and Final Cut Pro projects alone can easily range from 20 to 100 GB. On top of that, I also test local LLMs for AI experiments, which can take up just as much space. That's why I rely heavily on an external SSD for storing these large files. This approach keeps the internal drive clean and ensures that macOS and all my applications run smoothly. I purposely stick with the 256GB base model because upgrading to 512 or 1TB through Apple is expensive. Using an external SSD gives me all the storage I need without paying that premium. For projects using Next.js, Python, HTML, which I use daily as a computer science teacher, the internal SSD is more than sufficient. These projects are sizable but easily manageable without running into storage limits. Now let's talk about ports and accessories. The MacBook comes with the standard 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports on the left side, plus a headphone jack on the right. There is no built-in HDMI or SD card slot, which is something to keep in mind if you rely heavily on external displays or cameras. For my workflow, these 2 ports are usually enough. Since I work with an external SSD for Final Cut Pro projects and local LLMs, I use a small USB hub to expand connectivity. This gives me extra USB-A ports, HDMI output, and sometimes Ethernet for a stable network during heavy work sessions. Overall, the Air's minimalist ports are no problem with the right accessories. With a compact hub or dock, you can turn it into a fully equipped development workstation. And because all my gadgets are in matte black or dark tones, the MacBook blends perfectly into my setup, clean, organized and functional without clutter. Connectivity is crucial for a developer and the MacBook handles it very well. It comes with Wi-Fi 6E, which provides fast, stable connections, perfect for downloading large packages, cloning repos or syncing local databases. In my experience, even with multiple browser tabs, VS Code and simultaneous database access, the connection remains solid with no noticeable lag. Bluetooth 5.3 ensures that peripherals like wireless keyboards, mice, headphones and external trackpads stay reliably connected. I pair my MacBook with a set of Bluetooth devices for teaching, coding and video editing and haven't run into any dropouts. These wireless specs are the same as the previous M3 model, so you get familiar, reliable performance. One of the standard features of the MacBook is a feature it doesn't even have. It is completely fanless. Silent and sleek, it stays whisper quiet while you code, edit or run intensive tasks. That means zero noise during normal usage, which is fantastic for coding sessions, video editing and teaching. No distracting whirring in the background. Thermally, the M4 MacBook Air stays impressively cool for most tasks. When running typical development workloads like Next.js projects, Python scripts and local databases, the palm rest stays comfortable and the machine rarely gets uncomfortably warm. However, under heavy-duty workloads such as loading Docker containers, compiling large projects or testing local LLMs, rendering Final Cut Pro projects, the machine does warm up noticeably. During high-duty working sessions, I've seen the middle of the MacBook get slightly warm. The CPU may throttle slightly under long full-core stress, resulting in a smaller 1-digit % less performance than benchmarks. But this is a fair trade-off for the silent operation and extremely thin chassis. The MacBook is a joy to work with in quiet environments. For developers who prioritize silence and portability, this fanless design is a big win as long as you are aware of the thermal limits during extended high-load tasks. The MacBook features the same sharp and vibrant Retina display as its predecessor, delivering excellent color accuracy and clarity for coding, browsing and content review. I spend long hours on Next.js projects, Python scripts and web development, and the screen remains easy on the eyes with minimal strain. To protect my screen from side glances when sitting in cafes, I use a privacy filter. It does its job well, but it comes with a trade-off. The filter adds about 1 mm of thickness, preventing the lid from closing completely. It also slightly darkens the display, making it harder to see in bright outdoor conditions. Since the filter is magnetic rather than adhesive, it can bow in the middle if you're using the MacBook on your lap or lying in bed. This warping slightly distorts the display, causing a blurred effect at the center. While it's useful for privacy, these quirks make it less ideal for color-sensitive work or outdoor usage. Overall, the display itself is excellent for extended coding sessions, reading code, and reviewing projects. Just be aware that protective accessories like privacy filters can affect brightness, clarity, and lid closure. Now let's dive into benchmarks, which give a more objective view of the MacBook's performance under different workloads. I ran a series of tests to measure CPU, RAM, storage and database operations, all things that matter in my daily workflow as a computer science teacher and developer. First, I use Geekbench. Geekbench scores reflect both single-core and multi-core performance. The MacBook shows a significant improvement over the M3, especially in multi-core workloads, making compiling code, running Docker containers and multitasking much smoother. Single-core performance also remains excellent, ensuring fast responsiveness for integrated languages like Python or scripts in VS Code. I also ran Cinebench. The MacBook completes the benchmark faster than the M3 and maintains a stable performance under full core load, though fanless design means it can throttle slightly during prolonged stress, resulting in a very small dip in peak performance. CPU tests with Sysbench revealed that the M4 cores are faster than the M3, particularly for multi-threaded workloads, giving me snappy performance when compiling code or running simultaneous scripts. RAM tests showed stable bandwidth and low latency, making multitasking smooth. Even with 16GB of RAM, the system handled multiple VS Code instances, browsers and local databases without noticeable slowdown. Storage performance with Sysbench I/O tests confirmed that the 256GB SSD in the base configuration is fast, even if I have to offload larger media and local LLM files to an external SSD. Random reads and writes were consistent, supporting smooth operations in development tasks. For local database testing, I ran MongoPerf. This benchmark simulates bulk inserts, queries and transactions, and the MacBook performed for local development. For classroom exercises or small production simulations, the machine handled these tasks without hiccups. These numbers confirm that the M4 MacBook Air is both fast and efficient, making it an excellent choice for developers who need a portable machine without sacrificing performance. One of the most exciting aspects of the MacBook for developers is how it handles local AI models and LLMs, though being the base configuration. I've tested several using Ollama, which makes it possible to run smaller language models directly on the machine without needing cloud APIs. Smaller models like CodeLlama 7B or Gwen 2.5 Coder worked surprisingly well, even with just 16GB of RAM. But once you move into the larger models, those in the 20 to 100GB range, the MacBook simply can't handle them. For those, the 16GB of RAM is the bottleneck. While the MacBook is an incredibly capable and portable machine on its own, a few accessories make the daily workflow much smoother. First off, I use a USB dongle that adds an SD card reader, USB-A ports and HDMI output. For input devices, I use a Keychron K6 mechanical keyboard with brown switches. They strike a great balance, not too loud, yet highly responsive to short keystrokes, perfect for long coding sessions. Alongside that, I use the MX Master 3 mouse. To avoid distractions and stay focused, I also use wireless noise-cancelling headphones. They help create a quiet environment, whether I'm working in a busy cafe, a shared office, or even while traveling. I also protect my MacBook with a hard case shell, especially when I place it on different surfaces while traveling or working in cafes. This keeps the laptop free of scratches. All these accessories combined with a MacBook create a portable yet fully featured development environment. You get the compactness and battery life of the Air while still having access to external peripherals, displays and storage without compromise. And if you're curious about what I carry day to day as a developer and computer science teacher, stay tuned. An Everyday Carry Developer Edition video is coming up soon, showing exactly what's in my tech bag. The MacBook shines in real-world mobility. Its lightweight and thin chassis make it incredibly easy to carry, whether moving between classrooms, cafes or traveling. Over the past nearly 6 months, I've used it extensively around Vienna, working in cafes and co-working spaces. But I've also taken it on alpine trips, including mountain biking, excursions and longer hikes. Even in these environments, the laptop proved reliable and durable. To protect the MacBook from scratches and minor impacts, I always use a hardcase shell and a sleeve. especially when placing it on various surfaces outdoors or on the go. As a developer and teacher, the MacBook handles a wide variety of tools effortlessly. I primarily use VS Code for coding in Next.js, Python, HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Local LLM testing is also part of my workflow, and thanks to the M4's efficiency, I can run smaller models smoothly, though I store the larger ones on an external SSD during the 256GB internal storage. In my daily workflow, I rely on a handful of essential tools that keep my development environment smooth and efficient. I primarily use Raycast for fast app launching and workflow shortcuts, the macOS terminal and iTerm2 for command line tasks using CSH. Homebrew handles package management, while Amphetamine keeps my Mac awake during long builds or experiments. And one menu for system monitoring and window management. I bought this MacBook for 1,069 euros, thanks to the Apple student and teacher discount. Without that discount, the same configuration would have cost about 1,199 euros. But now, just a few months later, the price has dropped. In some places, you can find the base model for around 949 euros, which makes it an incredible value. At under 1,000 euros, you're getting a machine that can handle serious development workloads, local AI testing, video editing, and still run all day on battery in one of the lightest and thinnest chassis on the market. For the base configuration with 16GB of RAM and a 256GB SSD, I'd say the price is fair, especially considering the performance, battery life and silent design you get. Apple's upgrade pricing, however, is steep, jumping to 512GB or 1TB SSD storage or upgrading to 32GB RAM adds several hundred euros very quickly. That's why I stayed with the base SSD and instead invested in an external SSD, which I use for large projects. A lot of people ask me in the comments whether they should upgrade the SSD or the RAM. From my perspective as a developer, I would always recommend prioritizing RAM upgrades over SSD upgrades. Extra RAM gives you real-world benefits in development tasks, running Docker containers, working with databases, testing local LLMs, or just multitasking with VS Code browsers and terminals. Storage, on the other hand, is easier and much cheaper to expand externally. A fast external SSD costs a fraction of Apple's upgrading pricing, and it works perfectly for heavy projects like Final Cut Pro libraries or large LLM models. That's why I stayed with the base configuration and chose the 16GB of RAM. So my advice, if you're considering an upgrade, go for more RAM first. For most developers and beginners, that will have the biggest impact on performance and workflow. All things considered, with or without the discount, the MacBook Air with the M4 chip offers excellent value for students, teachers and developers. One of the most important questions with any laptop purchase is how well will it hold up in the future? With this MacBook, I think Apple has struck a good balance between performance, efficiency and longevity. The 3nm architecture of the M4 chip already gives you a lot of headroom for the next several years. For everyday tasks, web development, databases or even moderate video editing, it feels like it will stay responsive for at least the next 4 or 5 years without feeling outdated. Having 16GB of RAM in the base configuration also adds to its future-proofing. In terms of software support, Apple usually provides macOS updates for 7 to 8 years, so even if you buy it today, you can expect security and feature updates. The only thing I'd reconsider is the color. Midnight looks stunning, but even with Apple's improved coating compared to the M2, fingerprints are still noticeable. I end up wiping it with a microfiber cloth every day. If I had the chance to buy one again, I'd probably go for silver, since I use a hard case anyway, and that would keep it looking cleaner while still matching my dark themed gear setup. If you found this review helpful, make sure to give it a like. It really helps support the channel. And if you're interested in more deep dives into developer workflows, local AI testing or MacBook tips, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss upcoming videos. I've got some follow-ups planned on tools for developers on macOS, as well as an everyday carry developer edition where I'll show exactly what's in my tech bag. Drop a comment if you have any specific questions about the MacBook Air with the M4 chip, or if you want me to test something in a future video. I read every single one.